17-year-old Maya, a young black girl, stood at the military shooting range doors. Her hands shook as she held her visitor pass. Colonel Hayes stared down at her with cold eyes. "What's a little black girl doing here?" he said with a mean laugh. "Go home before you get hurt, child." Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The morning sun cast long shadows across Fort Bradley's training compound as 17-year-old Maya Johnson stood outside the imposing steel doors of the shooting facility. Her small frame seemed even tinier against the massive concrete structure, but her dark eyes held a determination that had carried her through countless obstacles before. She clutched the visitor's pass in her sweaty palm, reading the bold letters once more: "Special permission, civilian range access." Getting this pass had taken 3 weeks of phone calls, paperwork, and persistence that would have broken most people her age. But Maya wasn't most people. The heavy doors groaned open as she stepped inside. The smell hit her immediately: gun oil, concrete dust, and the metallic tang that lingered in places where thousands of rounds had been fired. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the sterile corridor. "You lost, little girl?" The voice boomed from behind her. Maya turned to see a mountain of a man approaching, Colonel Richard Hayes, according to his name tag. His chest was decorated with enough ribbons and medals to stock a military surplus store. His steel-gray hair was cut with military precision, and his pale blue eyes looked down at her with undisguised annoyance. "No, sir," Maya replied quietly, extending her pass. "I have permission to use the range today." Colonel Hayes snatched the paper from her hand, his thick fingers leaving wrinkles in the document. Behind him, a group of young Marines in training fatigues had gathered, their conversation dying as they watched the scene unfold. "This some kind of joke?" Hayes barked, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "Who authorized this nonsense?" "Major Williams, sir." "It's all there in the paperwork." Hayes squinted at the document, his jaw working like he was chewing something bitter. "Maya Johnson." He pronounced her name like it left a bad taste in his mouth. "And exactly what makes you think you belong on a military shooting range, Miss Johnson?" The group of Marines behind him chuckled. Maya could feel their eyes on her, taking in her worn sneakers, her simple jeans and hoodie, the way she seemed to shrink under the colonel's glare. To them she probably looked like any other teenager who'd somehow wandered into the wrong place. "I just want to shoot, sir," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You just want to shoot," Hayes repeated mockingly, his voice rising for the benefit of his audience. "Well, isn't that precious? Tell me, sweetheart, you ever even held a real gun before? Or did you learn everything from video games and rap music videos?" The Marines laughed louder now. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her expression neutral. She'd heard worse. Much worse. "I have some experience, sir." "Some experience." Hayes threw his head back and laughed. "Boys, we got ourselves a real Annie Oakley here. Some experience." He leaned down until his face was inches from hers. "This isn't some inner-city playground, little girl. This is a United States military facility. We train warriors here. Killers. Not little girls playing dress-up." Maya's fingers tightened around the strap of her small backpack, but she said nothing. Inside that bag was everything she'd brought from home: ear protection that had belonged to her grandfather, a small notebook filled with calculations and diagrams, and a photo she never went anywhere without. "Sir," she said quietly, "the paperwork is in order," Major Williams said. "I don't care what Williams said," Hayes cut her off. "That bleeding heart will approve anything if you sob-story him enough. But I run this range and I say who shoots here." He straightened to his full height, towering over her. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your little visitor's pass and march right back out those doors. Go find a nice safe arcade or something more appropriate for someone like you." The silence that followed was deafening. Maya stood there, feeling the weight of every stare, every smirk, every assumption being made about her based on nothing more than what they could see. She thought about leaving. It would be so easy to just turn around and walk away. No one would blame her. But then she thought about the photo in her bag. About the promise she'd made. About why she was really here. "Sir," she said, her voice stronger now, "I understand your concerns. But I have official permission and I'm not asking for any special treatment. Just 30 minutes on the range. That's all." Hayes's face darkened. "Special treatment? You think this is about special treatment?" He turned to address the Marines. "You hear that, boys? Little Miss Johnson here thinks she deserves to play soldier with the big kids." One of the younger Marines, a lean kid with Texas written all over his accent, stepped forward. Maybe we should just let her try, Colonel? Might be good for a laugh. A laugh, Hayes repeated slowly. You know what, Martinez? You might be onto something. He turned back to Maya with a cruel smile. Tell you what, sweetheart. I'll make you a deal. You want to shoot so bad? Fine. But we're not talking about some little .22p shooter. We're talking about real weapons. Military standard. Maya nodded. That's what I was hoping for, sir. Hayes' smile widened. Oh, this is going to be rich. Boys, clear lanes 7 through 10. We're about to have ourselves some entertainment. He looked Maya up and down once more. Hope you brought earplugs, little girl. These guns make a lot more noise than whatever water pistol you learned on. As the Marines moved to prepare the range, Maya pulled her grandfather's ear protection from her bag. The worn leather padding had molded to fit her ears perfectly over the years. She ran her thumb over the faded initials carved into the headband, SJ U.S. Army 1968 to 1992. Sergeant First Class Samuel Johnson had been one of the finest marksmen in his unit during Vietnam. Maya had spent countless afternoons listening to his stories, learning about breath control and sight alignment, about the difference between shooting to impress and shooting to survive. He'd been gone for 3 years now, but his lessons lived on in his granddaughter's steady hands and patient heart. Range is hot. Hayes bellowed, his voice carrying the authority of decades of command. Johnson, you're up. Let's see what all that experience taught you. Maya walked to lane 8, her footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet space. The Marines had gathered behind the safety line, some openly snickering, others just curious to see how badly this was going to go. She could feel their expectations pressing down on her like a physical weight. The weapon waiting for her was an M4 carbine, standard issue for the Marines, familiar to anyone who'd spent time around military personnel. Maya had never fired this exact model, but she'd studied it extensively. More importantly, she'd learned the fundamentals from the best teacher she'd ever known. Weapons loaded with 30 rounds, Hayes announced. Standard military target at 50 meters. Fire when ready. He paused for effect. Try not to hurt yourself, sweetheart. Maya picked up the rifle, feeling its weight and balance. It was heavier than what she was used to, but the principles were the same. She adjusted the stock against her shoulder, found her natural point of aim, and began to settle into position. Behind her, she could hear whispered comments. This is going to be painful to watch. Someone have the medic on standby? $10 says she can't even hit the target. Maya blocked them out. In her mind, she was back on her grandfather's small ranch in rural Texas, learning to shoot cans off fence posts with his old bolt-action rifle. She was 12 years old again, listening to his patient voice explaining how to control her breathing, how to find that natural pause between heartbeats where everything became still. Shooting isn't about the gun, Maya girl, he told her in his gravelly voice. It's about discipline. About patience. About understanding that every shot has consequences, and taking responsibility for where that bullet goes. She took her first deep breath, feeling her heart rate slow. The noise of the range faded away until all she could hear was her own controlled breathing. She lined up the sights, finding that perfect sight picture her grandfather had drilled into her for years. The first shot surprised everyone, including Hayes. Instead of the wild spray they'd expected, the M4 cracked once, precisely, the muzzle barely moving despite the weapon's recoil. Through the spotting scope they could see a clean hole in the 10 ring. Lucky shot, someone muttered. Maya didn't respond. She was already settling back into position, finding her rhythm. Her grandfather had taught her that consistency was everything in marksmanship. Not just one good shot, but the ability to do it again and again regardless of pressure or circumstances. The second shot joined the first in the 10 ring. Then the third. By the fifth shot, the whispered comments behind her had stopped entirely. Colonel Hayes stepped up to the spotting scope, his expression shifting from amused condescension to confused focus. Through the magnified view, he could see something that shouldn't have been possible. The girl wasn't just hitting the target. She was shooting a group that would make his best Marines jealous. What the hell? He muttered under his breath. Maya continued shooting with mechanical precision. Each shot was deliberate, controlled, placed with the kind of accuracy that took years to develop. She wasn't firing rapidly or trying to show off. She was simply executing fundamentals at a level that spoke of countless hours of practice and natural talent. Shot after shot found its mark in the 10 ring. By the 15th round, Hayes was leaning over the spotting scope with intense concentration. By the 20th, he'd called for quiet on the range. The Marines behind the line had gone completely silent, watching something they couldn't quite believe. When Maya fired her 30th and final shot, She immediately cleared the weapon and placed it safely on the bench before turning around. The silence in the range was absolute. 20-some military personnel stood frozen, staring at a 17-year-old girl who'd just done something none of them had seen before. Hayes straightened up from the spotting scope, his face pale. "Martinez," he said quietly, "run that target down here." The young Marine hurried to retrieve the target. When he brought it back, Hayes held it up for everyone to see. The paper target, which had started the morning pristine and white, now had a cluster of holes so tight they almost formed a single ragged opening in the 10-ring. 30 shots, Hayes said, his voice barely audible. 50 meters, standing position. He looked at the target again as if expecting it to change. This is a 298 out of 300. With iron sights. One of the Marines whispered, "That beats the base record." "That beats the state record," another added. Hayes looked up at Maya, who stood quietly at the firing line, her hands folded in front of her. For the first time since she'd walked into the facility, he seemed to really see her. Not the assumptions he'd made based on her appearance, but the young woman who'd just demonstrated a level of marksmanship that most of his trained warriors couldn't achieve. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked. "My grandfather, sir. Sergeant First Class Samuel Johnson, Vietnam veteran. He taught me everything I know." Hayes felt something shift in his chest. The name was familiar. Samuel Johnson. Big Sam Johnson from the 173rd Airborne? Maya's eyes widened slightly. "You knew him?" "Knew him? Hell, I served under him for 2 years in the late 70s. Best damn marksman I ever saw." Hayes looked at the target again, then back at Maya. "He never mentioned having a granddaughter. I think he wanted to protect me from this world, sir. But after he died, I promised myself I'd honor what he taught me. I've been training for 3 years to get good enough to—" She trailed off. "Good enough to what?" Maya reached into her backpack and pulled out a photograph. It showed a young black woman in army dress uniform, her smile bright and proud. The resemblance to Maya was unmistakable. "My mother, Lieutenant Sarah Johnson. She was killed in Afghanistan when I was 7. Sniper attack." Maya's voice remained steady, but Hayes could see the emotion in her dark eyes. "Grandpa Sam taught me to shoot because he said it was part of our family legacy. But I kept training after he died because I want to serve. I want to be like her." The range remained silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't some random teenager looking for thrills. This was a young woman carrying on a family tradition of service, honoring the memory of a fallen mother and a beloved grandfather who'd both worn the uniform with distinction. Hayes studied the target once more, then looked at Maya with new understanding. The shooting she'd just demonstrated wasn't just impressive. It was the kind of natural talent that military recruiters dreamed about finding. Combined with the discipline and maturity she'd shown under pressure, she represented something special. "The current Navy SEAL marksmanship record," he said slowly, "is a 295 out of 300 at 50 meters with iron sights. It's been standing for 6 years. Maya nodded. She'd done her research. "You just shot a 298, Hayes continued. "As a civilian. At 17 years old. With a weapon you'd never fired before." "Yes, sir." Hayes handed the target to Martinez, then walked over to Maya. When he stopped in front of her, his posture had changed entirely. Gone was the condescending bully who'd tried to intimidate her earlier. In his place stood a career military officer who recognized something extraordinary when he saw it. "Miss Johnson," he said formally, "I owe you an apology. What I said earlier, there's no excuse for it. You came here with proper authorization, asking for nothing more than the chance to shoot, and I let my assumptions and prejudices cloud my judgment. That was wrong and I'm sorry." Maya nodded graciously. "Thank you, sir. I understand why you were skeptical." "No," Hayes said firmly. "You don't understand, and that's part of what makes this even worse. I wasn't skeptical, I was prejudiced. I took one look at you and made assumptions based on your age, your race, your appearance. I didn't give you the basic respect that any person walking through those doors deserved, let alone someone carrying on the legacy of Sam Johnson." He turned to address the Marines who'd been watching. "This young woman just gave all of you a master class in marksmanship and military bearing. She faced hostility and disrespect with dignity and professionalism that some of you could learn from. More importantly, she just broke every shooting record this base has ever seen." Hayes looked back at Maya. "What are your plans after high school?" "I've been accepted to several colleges, sir. But I'm hoping to attend West Point. I want to be an officer like my mother. With shooting like that, every branch of the military would want you. The Marines, the Army, Special Forces." He paused. Even the SEALs. Maya smiled for the first time since entering the facility. I'd be honored to serve in any capacity, sir. But my goal has always been to lead soldiers the way my mother did. Hayes extended his hand and Maya shook it firmly. Miss Johnson, it would be my privilege to write you a letter of recommendation for West Point. But more than that, I want you to know that what you've accomplished here today, not just the shooting but the way you handled yourself under pressure, that's the kind of character and skill the military needs. As Maya packed her gear, several of the Marines approached her. Martinez, the young Texan who'd earlier suggested letting her shoot for a laugh, stepped forward first. Ma'am, he said respectfully, I just wanted to say, that was the most impressive shooting I've ever seen. And the way you handled yourself when the colonel was, well, when he was being unfair, that took real strength. Maya shouldered her backpack. Thank you. But honestly, what happened here today wasn't about proving anything to anyone else. It was about proving something to myself and honoring the people who taught me. As she walked toward the exit, Colonel Hayes called out one last time. Miss Johnson? She turned back. Your grandfather would be proud. And I have a feeling your mother is too. Maya nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I hope so, sir. I really hope so. As the heavy doors closed behind her, the shooting range remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Martinez broke the quiet. Colonel, what just happened here? Hayes picked up the target one more time, studying the impossibly tight group of shots that had shattered every record the base had ever kept. What happened here, Marine, is that we just met the future. And we almost let our own ignorance keep us from recognizing it. He handed the target back to Martinez. Frame this. Put it up in the lobby with a plaque. New base record, Miss Maya Johnson, age 17, civilian. And underneath that add this. Excellence has no prerequisites except dedication and heart. As Maya walked across the compound toward the main gate, she pulled out her phone and scrolled to a contact labeled simply Mom. It was a number that had been disconnected for 10 years, but she'd never been able to delete it. She composed a text message she'd never be able to send. I did it, Mom. Grandpa Sam's lessons, your example, and everything you both taught me about honor and service. I'm ready to follow in your footsteps. I love you. She didn't hit send, she never did. But somehow writing the words was enough. Maya Johnson had come to the shooting range that morning as a teenager with something to prove. She was leaving as a young woman who'd proven something far more important than her marksmanship skills. She'd proven that excellence, courage, and character couldn't be judged by appearance or assumptions, and that the best way to honor those who came before was to exceed even their highest expectations while never forgetting the values they'd instilled. The future was waiting and Maya Johnson was ready for it.